Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And today joining me is Blak Wave Productions. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Welcome, Michael and Mina. It is so great to have you both here with me today. So the first thing I want to do to start this all off is have each of you introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your background and experience, and let our viewers get acquainted. So I'll start with you, Mina.
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, Mina Fumbo, based in Bristol in the southwest of the UK. So we're about 2 hours southwest of London, for a geographical sake. Yeah, one half of Blak Wave Productions with obviously Mike, which is our TV, film, digital. We're a small indie based in the southwest, and when we launched, actually, we were I think the first or one of the only at the time, one out of 140 TV production companies, and we're the only one that was Black owned, Black led, content for broadcast. In terms of me, listen, yeah, I'm really passionate about queer stories. I love sport. I actually played American football for a little while, played rugby for a long time. So yeah, I love sport stories. Yeah, I love telling queer stories, centering Black women at the front of my pieces, produce and direct, and and I'm also a speaker by trade as well. So I do a lot of like coaching, speaking, leadership stuff as well.
Thank you for being here, Mina. And Michael.
Yeah, my name's Michael Jenkins. Yeah, I was born in Bristol, and yeah, Mina and I are both based in Bristol. And yeah, I'm a writer, director, just a general filmmaker. Started off making music videos. I didn't go to any film school or anything like that. I sort of went to the YouTube university and learned sort of by picking up a camera and just going out and doing stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I've been producing all sorts of different types of content, from music videos, more commercial leaning content, working with commercial clients, filming events, documentaries, and dramas as well.
Yes, wonderful. Well, it's great to have you both here with me today. So I wanted to start off with talking about Blak Wave Productions, of course. Tell me how it got started, and were you trying to fill a space that you saw that was needed when it came to British film and television? Michael, I'll have you start out.
Yeah, I think, we just felt like there was a lot of talk in the city around diversity and how diverse was, and which is a real good thing to champion about the city. But the reality on the ground is the city is very segregated, and there's pockets of wealth, and the pockets of despair are very close together in this city. And it's definitely, as our mayor puts it, a tale of two cities. And it also reflects very much the industry, the film industry that is in Bristol, where everybody was screaming about diversity, but when you actually looked at it, none of these companies were diverse or led by by Black people. So we felt like we were doing our own thing separately, and we felt like coming together and actually creating this company that can really put our stories at the forefront of what we're trying to see on the big screen, and pitch those to commissioners with authenticity and integrity. We felt like that was something that was missing from this region. So that's part of the impetus of Blak Wave.
Amazing. And Mina, talk to me about the importance of making sure that queer stories, in particular, Black queer stories, are at the forefront and are being told and are being explored, in unique ways and from unique perspectives.
I think just to kind of give you a bit of a landscape of the UK, like a lot of stories that you see tend to be London centric. London's the capital. London's where a lot of the money historically has been for film. In fact, it still kind of is. There's been a big move in more recent times to make more stuff out in the regions, but a lot of stuff that also then will travel internationally will have a London perspective. So the Black experience that you see in film or TV is London centric. And then within that, the queer Black experience, which is so minimal, is almost invisible, or again, it might be from a London-centric experience. So for me, it was always been important to kind of center Black people in those spaces, but then as a woman centering our stories, because back in the day you'd always have the token Black guy, and do you know what I mean? And so over time, again, with sort of more global stories and North American stories, I grew up watching a lot of like African American, you know, programs, as we all did, and we're very heavily influenced by that. And in terms of like Black Hollywood, that was kind of grew up in the John Singleton era, so Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, and then the rom-com, so like, you know, Best Man, do you know what I mean? All those types of movies are what influenced my childhood. But actually the stories around, well, what were the, when I was like in my teens and 20s, there weren't stories about Black women coming from the UK, not from London. We weren't represented. So for me, it's almost like I'm really passionate about going back and filling in those gaps. So a documentary I produced recently was looking at sort of 7 generations of queer Black women and just hearing their experiences, because again, it's very white, gay, male stories that you hear in the UK in terms of the queer experience. And then in terms of the next thing I'm trying to make is looking very specifically at queer Black tomboys from the 90s, and just kind of using sort of reenactments and drama to show those images that we've not seen in British sort of cinema or British TV before.
Wonderful, wonderful. Michael, tell me, what's the vibe like, you know, in Bristol? When you think about, you know, telling a story, especially one that's not London centric, what differentiates, you know, a Bristol story from something that you would see from something in London?
Well, that's a really good question. I think you probably definitely see more green spaces, more hills, you know, more forests, things like that, you know, because we are a city which is, you know, essentially in the countryside. Yeah, and I think what you would probably see is what I really love exploring is like the nuances within our cultures, you know, and I feel like, you know, we see a lot of stereotypical images coming out of London. It is the capital, it is where a lot of people are, but we feel like what you'll see in Bristol, I mean, obviously the landscape is very different. The accent is also quite different as well. So that's also something that differentiates it. And I think we've got a unique, you know, take on different things. You know, there is a carnival that happens in Bristol, you know, which is just as old or a couple of years younger than the one that happens in London. You know, there's you know, our communities have been spread around the country. And I feel like, you know, the reason why we're passionate about, we just want to see ourselves on the screen, and we're passionate about putting that across. And definitely coming from Bristol, coming from something that's not so, you know, city centric, I think that's it's unique. There isn't enough of it, and we're here to try and create more of it and tell more of those stories.
Certainly. And I'm not sure about each of yours specific background, but I wanted to ask, even though you're also telling, you know, specifically British stories and stuff, from the things that I've seen, I realized that you also make sure to explore what those identities mean, especially West African or West Indian identities. Mina, could you talk a little bit about that, as well as you, Michael, making sure that those identities and cultures are represented in the stories as well?
Yeah, so my background, I'm a British Nigerian. So my parents are Nigerian, and they moved here, and I was born obviously in the UK. And so sort of have a very sort of strong sort of, British influence, but obviously strong Nigerian influence as well. Bristol's quite an interesting city because Bristol's got a very strong Caribbean influence. And when I say Caribbean, I mean specifically Jamaican. So if you're from Bristol, and it's great. But if you're from Bristol, it's kind of like, you know, everything's all about Jamaican heritage. It feels like that as a Nigerian. We're not really, people, especially people outside the community, don't recognize the difference as such. Well, that was very much the story growing up. These days, it's much more of a diverse community in terms of Jamaican heritage, Somali, and, you know, West African. Like, we have a lot more, there's a bit more representation happening, but outside looking in, people just think, oh, Jamaican culture, Bristol, or Caribbean culture, Bristol. So for me, it's really important to kind of, put that British Nigerian experience on screen. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I mean, so my background, you know, my grandparents, you know, came from Jamaica and Dominica. So that's my sort of experience. I grew up in a you know, Dominican household. I said my grandfather was from Jamaica, but, you know, my grandmother on my mum's side is the, you know, the maternal sort of you know, matriarchy in the family, and so Dominique has played a real key role in my upbringing, as well as Jamaica. And then another one of my grandparents is from the UK. I think for me, just having that, I really want to explore sort of looking at, you know, the influence of, you know, Caribbean migration. They call it over here the Windrush generation. The importance of that generation, the people, the elders that came here, that were called for. You know, just after the war, Britain was torn apart, was savaged. You know, the roads were a mess. They called for people from the Caribbean to come and help, you know, fix up the place, and that's what our elders did. And but again, they were faced with, you know, racism. They were put into, you know, they were put into ghettos. You know, they were refused, you know, to be able to rent somewhere. They were refused loans from a bank to be able to buy things. So they had to create, you know, their own banking system and things like that. There's so much rich story of that struggle that essentially, you know, these Caribbean people helped to break down the barriers, like, you know, to allow, you know, to allow everybody else to enjoy the sort of equality that we face now. But the Caribbean community was very much a part of the Bristol bus boycott. What was happening in America was also happening in Bristol, you know, and where, you know, the community boycotted the buses because they wouldn't employ Black people to work on the buses. So that all happened in Bristol. So there's some real key sort of socially significant, that boycott led to the Race Relations Act, which basically opened up the country and led to all these legislations that we hear around equalities and things like that. So that sort of story is a story that is sort of not really told, or it's untold. And there's so many different ways that to explore that. And I'm a lover of mythology, and I love, you know, Caribbean mythology and British mythology, African mythology, and I really want to fuse all this together and explore film through that as well, tell those stories.
Fabulous, fabulous. Now I'm going to ask each of you to give me two of your favorite, and maybe not favorite if you don't want to pick favorites, but two of your maybe productions that stand out in your mind that you've been a part of, that Blak Wave Productions has done, and why they stand out in your mind, why they're significant to you, and if you think about if you're going to expand on any of that in the future. So Mina, I'll start with you.
Okay, I'll talk about Home Carnival Queen. So that was, Mike touched on the carnival. So in the UK, you have Notting Hill Carnival, which is the big carnival that people probably have heard of. Then in Bristol, we have St. Paul's Carnival, which is our equivalent of that, which is, and it was basically, Home Carnival Queen was filmed during lockdown. And I really just wanted to kind of, you know, the carnival was obviously cancelled, events were kind of cancelled, but I really kind of wanted to center what would a home carnival look like. And it was kind of exploring the experience of like an elder woman of the community's experience and memories of carnival, who's from Trinidad, where people would argue is the home of carnival. As a Nigerian, I don't agree with that. I believe that we all have our own interpretation of masquerade and dance, but she believes it's from Trinidad. And then a young person who's from Nigeria who moved to the UK, and her experience of carnival as a dancer, and within that telling the story of carnival. And I think for me, that's quite powerful because you know, they played it out on TV as well as it going digital, but also, you know, I had 3 dark-skinned Black women with braids, you know, in the film, center stage. And again, it's not like an image that you see on mainstream TV in that way. People might be wearing, there's nothing wrong with a weave or whatever, but that was something that I wanted to kind of portray. And it was the beginning of my centering the characters that I want to center, and telling, again, a Bristol story rather than a London story. And I guess the other one for me would be The Glorious Ones, which was the film I mentioned earlier, which is about several generations of queer Black women and non-binary people and their stories. I wanted to find 100 years worth of stories and go from like 8 people in like late teens, 20s, 30s, 40s. But yeah, it was really hard to find sort of open Black lesbians in their 80s that were willing to share that story, because people are still hidden or not visible, or it's just not connected or not willing to speak out. But we did get up to people in their late 60s through down to sort of early 20s. And that was an amazing personal journey, but also just, yeah, hearing people's experiences from, you know, people that had come from across parts of Europe, actually, from, you know, Italy to like Wales to South Africa to the UK. Everyone found themselves in Bristol somehow, and hearing those journeys and how people got there was just like mind-blowing for me. So those were my 2 sort of standout ones.
Thank you, Mina. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when we first started Blak Wave, obviously the pandemic hit. So we basically launched our company, and then 3 months later, the country shut down, the world shut down. So we were in a bit of a dilemma, a bit of limbo. What's going to happen? Nobody knew anything. And then, you know, and then protests started happening. The Black Lives Matter protests were happening in America, and they happened here a few years ago, and they sparked up again. I've been following a group of protesters that have been campaigning all things Colston, basically. The city revered a slave trader, from the 17th century, and lots of buildings and streets and important monuments and things were named after this person. And for years, people have been protesting it peacefully. And then sort of during that summer, there was a 10,000 strong protest, and that statue was pulled down and thrown into the river where, the slave trading boats used to set sail for Africa, and, on their sort of triangular trade of terror. And capturing that, I was there in the moment, capturing that and being able to make a short about that whole that day, and the reverberations of that day around the world, and how that impact happened from Bristol, and being able to capture that and have it sort of broadcast on mainstream TV right after the sort of 6 o'clock news was really sort of important, because it was really important for me to show that story and show the story from, not just show that it was just one day of anarchy or whatever. It was a lot deeper than that, and it was a lot more of a bigger process to that, and it was inevitable, but it had to happen like that because the authorities got in the way. So I think that was really a special moment. And then obviously the short film that I've written, directed, called Pickney, was definitely a massive moment for me, because I spent a long time writing that story, and then being able to getting it funded was great, but obviously it was the pandemic, so it wasn't so great because we had to shoot that during COVID, which was brought up loads of problems and things like that. But we got through it, and definitely this, and from that it got into the American Black Film Festival, one of the biggest Black film festivals in the world, and won a fan favorite award. So I think it really sort of just being able to tell that story and show, Black British Caribbean life, a little snippet of it. I think that was really sort of satisfying, seeing your work on the big screen. There's nothing more satisfying than that, in my opinion. So yeah, that was great.
Awesome. Now, for both of you, when Blak Wave started, the pandemic hit right after. So there was a lot that you had to learn and adjust for and adapt to because of that. So give me, each of you, what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned so far, being a part of Blak Wave Productions, and give us a little taste or tease of the future about what we can expect, to come. I'll start off with you, Mina.
Go to me first, a hard one. I don't know if this is the biggest thing that I've learned, but I guess it's a significant thing. And I don't know if it's a learning or whether it's just a reinforcement of something I've always known, but I feel like the game is already rigged, and you're just kind of like, you just have to maneuver within a game, that almost shoot your shot, so to speak, and hope that it lands. And if you're lucky, it will land. But otherwise, it's all about networks. It's all about contacts, reputation, who you know, how you move. And it's there's very, very few things that, from what I've seen so far, I think there's very, very few opportunities that are genuinely, authentically based purely on, oh, I wrote this, what do you think? Most things come from a relationship. And it doesn't mean to say that the things that get produced or made aren't amazing and great, but in order to get in the room, or in order to it be seen by the right person, or in order to, you can have something in the room, be seen by the right person, the finance is there, but someone has to still vouch for you behind the scenes, off the record. Does that make sense? I feel like that part of the game is great. Not or skeptical, but just honest about what I've seen. And I thought that in my 20s, and I left the industry and I went off and did a whole bunch of other things. I came back in, now late 30s, I'm 40 now, but at the time when we launched Blak Wave, I was in my late 30s. And I almost was optimistic that things had changed. Actually, I don't think things have not really changed that much. It just, harder to navigate because people say that it's changed. And then you've got to sift through the people that are saying things but behind the scenes still aren't doing the right things. So you've got more sort of to do. But when you do find those good people, and you do make those next, then they're game changers, and they'll, you know, there are really great people out there that believe in your product, that will support you till the cows come home, as they say, that are there. And yeah, so I believe in the power of humanity in that sense, and people using their power for the right thing. Full stop, new paragraph. But the game is also rigged, and there's a lot to kind of sift through and move. So don't be fooled, and don't underestimate that.
Awesome.
If that answers the question.
Yes.
Was it the big thing you've learned? Was there
And
a
a tease for what's to come? Anything you're working on? Anything you are?
I feel like keep watching and you'll find out.
Okay, perfect. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, you know, we've definitely learned a lot over the last sort of 2 years, 2.5 years. I think probably the biggest takeaway, obviously echoing everything Mina said around the actual industry and the game itself. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that, you know, you got to make things you're passionate about. I think that is the biggest thing. If you want longevity in this game and you want to stay sane, I think you've got to really just be always making something you're passionate about. Yeah, I think that is like that's probably the biggest takeaway from that. And you know, as far as, you know, stuff coming up, just, you know, look out. Where I'm definitely interested in horror, in the horror world, and telling Black British horror stories. So yeah, watch this space.
Lovely, lovely. And speaking of watch this space, how can people watch your films, watch your everything that you've produced? How can they keep in contact with Blak Wave Productions? How can they get updates? How can they follow? How can they support or donate if they want?
I would say we're always open to taking finance for our films. We've got lots of ideas, so feel free to hit us up on that. But mainly, and you can contact us via our website, blakwaveproductions.com. But I'd say on our socials, we don't post very often, but when we do post, it's because we've got something to say. So you can see that, yeah, at Blak Wave Pro. Across those socials, you'll find stuff that we're doing. In terms of films, I think some of them are only for British audiences, I think, just based on the licensing. And then the other ones, again, some of them are still doing the festival route, so they're not released publicly. But ultimately, everything will end up on probably YouTube via our website at some point. So just keep your eyes sort of, you know, on the dial when it comes to us. And yeah, anytime something finishes the festival route or comes off of the network stream, then it will go via our website onto the page.
Thank you. And we're going to have the links and everything in the description below, so our viewers can go ahead and check that out. Mina and Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a pleasure getting to chat with you. And thank you for the important work that you do in telling so many unique stories. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
To our viewers, please follow Team Racine Productions at Team Racine on all forms of social media. Click around our YouTube channel and check out our other interviews, vlogs, forums, and more. And while you're at it, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. But most of all, thank you for watching. Bye, everyone.